Hi, I'm Kyle Ferrill of The Balanced Singer, and today's topic is using the RCM voice syllabus. This is sort of a part one introduction. So why use the RCM voice syllabus? I've now taught at many universities all over the US, public, private, East Coast, West Coast, Midwest, now in the South, you name it. I feel like I have a pretty good feel for the average level of singers who enter collegiate voice study. With the possible exceptions of those students who have extensively studied a second instrument growing up, most singers wind up with vocal skills that are far more developed than their musicianship skills. They lack a certain infrastructure for music reading, interval recognition, major minor chord recognition, etc. This is exacerbated by a few key factors. The vast majority of choral ensembles learn their music by rote. That's the fastest way. A lot of choirs are trying to get a one at contest or whatnot, and it's the fastest way to do it and the easiest way to do it, even though it hampers the student's long-term growth. Voice lessons are for the privileged few, and they seldom include theory or sight singing. I think it's very, very common for people taking piano lessons to learn some theory along the way. Most publishers have a repertoire book, a technique book, and a theory book all at the same level for piano study, and it's standard operating procedure. At least it's what I did in my piano lessons, to use all of those and balance those studies. I know of zero voice teachers other than people who use this RCM that do that sort of thing. Many people have it in mind that young people, quote, shouldn't take voice lessons. I honestly don't know where that came from. But alas, I hear it regularly. What's the youngest a student should take voice lessons? And I hear 13 for some reason as a number that's thrown out. It seems like they picked that number out of a hat, but there's absolutely no reason why an 8-year-old or a 7-year-old or a 12-year-old shouldn't be taking voice lessons. If the teacher knows the repertoire, knows what technical things can be worked on, what musical things can be worked on, there's absolutely no reason why somebody can't take voice lessons alongside their violin lessons or their piano lessons or their karate class or whatever the case may be. Luckily, there's a really wonderful solution to all of these issues that is easy to implement, free to adopt, and time-tested. It's the Royal Conservatory of Music in Canada. In addition to being a university music program, it also oversees a music training program, and it's been around for more than 100 years. In Canada, it is widely used and recognized as a terrific multi-level training program for musicians of all ages and virtually any instrument you could imagine. It has not yet been widely adopted in the US, but candidly, I'm hoping to help change that. In the case of voice, there are 12 levels: preparatory, 1 through 10, and then ARCT, which is what they call their diploma. If you take a look at the requirements, both vocal technique-wise and repertoire-wise, it's roughly equivalent to a master's degree level difficulty in the United States, most programs. The syllabus is free of charge and available online in PDF format. If you just Google RCM voice syllabus, you'll get right to it. Note that all of their syllabi are updated every 7 years, so look for the one that's 2019. They actually just went through a complete update of that syllabus, so make sure you're looking at the 2019 one, not the 2012 one. If a student so desires, they can take the exam and actually get a certificate of their achievement. That costs money, so some people that won't be doable for, but if there's money there available, or you can get somebody to help with the scholarship, I think that would be an extra feather in the student's cap to actually go through the process of taking the exam, getting the actual certificate, and having the big win, the big pat on the back of that process. However, if that's not possible or feasible, anyone can use the materials and the structure with or without doing the exams. Each level has the following: technique exercises, what we sometimes call warm-ups; chord identification, for example, the teacher plays a chord on the piano and the student says whether it's major or minor; interval finding, for example, the teacher gives a pitch on the piano and the student finds the given interval, both ascending and descending. So there's a lot of learning that goes into that. How do you find a perfect fourth ascending? You get to talk about the strategy that you would use as an expert sight reader and teach your students how to do that sort of thing, which will, of course, empower them in choir and empower them in their own private practice time. There's also sight singing at every level, and repertoire, of course, at every level. Each of these elements start very, very simply at the lower levels and gradually, underline gradually, increase in difficulty level by level. This, I think, is the real genius of the program. As the teacher, I don't have to constantly be thinking about how to crank up the level and gradually nudge my students towards higher and higher achievement. The system does it for me. If I've got a student at level 5, for instance, and they start to really master the above components at level 5, if they start to really nail the technical exercises, if they're singing the repertoire with ease and beauty and mastery, they've got those chords down at that level, they've got the intervals down where they can do it really, really well, they're doing well in the sight singing, then maybe it's time to bump up to level 6. That's the point if they were taking the tests where we'd say, hey, we need to get you taking this exam for level 5 and pass on to level 6. If you're not using the exams, you just say, hey, starting next week, let's work on the level 6 exercises and the level 6 sight singing, and they go, whoa, okay, crank it up. The only moderately challenging aspect for a teacher new to RCM is, what level should I place my student at? I have found through spending some time studying the technical exercises and repertoire lists that it's relatively easy to determine where a student should place. Also, some advice given by the RCM is as follows, and I'll just read this. How do I know what level is appropriate for my student? Students can enter the music development program, which is what they used to call this program. This is from the 2012 syllabus, by the way, but it still holds. They can move from level to level at their own pace. Students and teachers should consult the syllabus guide to determine the appropriate level. Many students and teachers start with the repertoire selections. The wide range of selections in the music development program repertoire lists make it easy to match each student to a level. Review the scale, chord, and arpeggio patterns required at that level, noticing keys, tempos, formats. You may find that your student is ahead in some areas but requires further development in others. Consider those elements that are already firmly in your student's grasp and decide which ones need additional review. Finally, look at the musicianship requirements. What if my student's repertoire level is higher than their technical and musicianship levels? If your student's abilities in the areas of technique, oral skills, or reading skills are behind his or her current repertoire level, we generally advise you to opt for a lower level. I totally agree with that. And that's going to be the case more often than not. It's a bit of a pain in the neck if you say, okay, this student is at level 6 repertoire, but level 4 chords and level 5 technical exercises. Oh my gosh, it's so much to keep track of. So I think it's much better, and usually they're not that far apart. They're maybe one level ahead or behind in a certain level. Just keep them all at one place is my advice, and make your life and their life more simple. At each level, there's a range of challenge in the repertoire lists. As soon as you get to know the repertoire lists, you'll find that this is totally true. Your student has the option of substituting a piece from the next higher level for one assessment selection. Planning your students' progress in this way allows them to focus on the higher levels of music making, the finesse of their performance, and the pleasure of accomplishment. Your students will enjoy a high level of performance success while also securing necessary musicianship skills that will provide them with a stronger foundation. What is wrong with any of that? Okay, so this is the end of that little quote, and back to my blog post, which you can find at kyleferrill.com. I believe that if you take even a bit of time to familiarize yourself with the materials, you'll find it relatively easy to figure out what level your student should begin. I also believe that if a critical mass of voice teachers would use these fabulous materials, the state of music making in our country would rise precipitously, and the musicianship gap so commonly seen between young singers and young instrumentalists would narrow and eventually disappear. If you're interested in more information about implementing this RCM in your voice teaching, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. You can contact me through my website, kyleferrill.com, which I'll put the link to in the notes below. Additionally, I've created a closed Facebook group called RCM Voice Teachers. I hope you'll join us if you're curious about this, or if you're somebody who already uses these materials and would like to help people who are figuring it out. Lastly, I'll be making more posts, more videos about the RCM on this very channel, so please check back. Thank you so much, and I hope you'll join us in using these materials.